Hey everybody, I'm Amber.
And I'm Maddie.
And this is the 200th episode of Witches Talking Tarot. Fuck, we have been rocking this
do
shit.
not have to do that again.
No, we don't. Yeah, like, goddamn, we got it. Like, I was like, yeah, that's not what we usually do. If you are a regular listener, you know that. So, high five us. Like, yeah, that was great. Yeah. So, we thought this is the 200th episode. Not only did our own personal baker create for us a wonderful celebration item for our 200th episode, but also we have, we think, a pretty awesome conversation to have for our 200th episode. So please come sit a spell with us while we talk magical ethics.
So I just want to do a disclaimer while we start. This is our own personal opinions.
Yes.
Everyone has different opinions when it comes to magical ethics. What is right for me is not right for blah blah blah. We're speaking from our own personal opinion.
Right.
And we may not always agree.
Right. And the whole, like, one of the things I would like to see happen from this episode, because Maddie's going to give me things to think about I've never thought about. I'm going to give her things to think about she hasn't thought about. And we'd like you to be a part of this conversation where you're also thinking about things differently, no matter what your religion is, because there's magic in all things. And there's the things that we're going to talk about could relate to multiple different areas in life, not just magic, but especially in religious places or spiritual places. So we really would like to see everybody's cogs turning, not just ours, or not to speak for Maddie, but like that's I would like, I want you guys to be thinking along with us. Yeah. And also, like, just like we're speaking for ourselves, our ethics may not match up all the time with each other. Our ethics may not match up with you and vice versa. But also the ethics that we hold, our own morals, our own personal views on things are so different that that's going to feed into our views on these things. And you guys are just as individualistic and different as we are. So, like, we'd love to hear your comments on what you bring to the table, because if we've never thought about it, if you don't hear us talking about it, then we're probably not thinking about it. So let us know so that we can continue this conversation even further, even just amongst ourselves, just for our own edification, our own knowledge, because it's so important. Hey, we're recording. Sorry, y'all.
How would you like to start out?
Okay, so let's start out with the elephant in the room. Let's go ahead and talk baneful magic. Yeah, I was like, there's an elephant right here.
Did you plan that, or was that just
no? It's there, and I knew it was there. I collect elephants, but we don't have anywhere for my elephant collection, and it's so many of my elephants have gotten broken. It actually kind of makes me a little sad to see them out. But this one, my brother gave me. He was my first or second elephant, and he really made me fall in love with elephants. So, yeah, but I couldn't help it. The elephant in the room.
Magic. Would you like to go first with this one, Amber?
Oh my God, it's so dirty. Sorry. Okay, let me start out. Okay, baneful magic. I assume that most people go, oh, well, you are so love and light. We already know that you are against baneful magic. However, ethically, from a magical perspective. So, actually, I would like to start, before we hit baneful magic, let us just, in that same line of thought with disclaimer, when we say ethics in magic, we are specifically talking about ethics in practicing magic and practicing witchcraft. Is that correct or incorrect?
No, that's correct.
Okay, just want to make sure, because, like, I say there's magic in all things, so you know what I mean? Like, just want to make sure that I'm on the same page, right? Okay. So, from a standpoint of practicing magic and practicing witchcraft, and that is the act of manipulating energy to come to a specific end that you are wanting to influence the events to be. Okay. So I have a belief. And again, so this is us talking from our own perspectives, and I can't speak for everybody, but I have a belief that if the universe truly doesn't want something to happen, it will not happen. Right?
I think I agree with that. I really do. I have to agree with that because I don't believe that the universe, and I'm going to maybe get some hate for this. I don't believe that the universe or the goddess, I'm going to reference the goddess because of my path, would allow an innocent person or a situation to experience pain and suffering and whatever's like negative sent their way when it is truly not needed but not deserved.
Okay.
That's just me. I know a lot of people are like, I can, hex these people and my power is all powerful and blah blah blah. But I simply cannot believe that someone can hex someone for no reason and the universe or the goddess just be like, okay.
Right.
No,
I agree.
But that's just me.
Right. No, and I agree. So like, here's my standpoint on baneful magic from what I've come to so far. And I would like this conversation to maybe change my line of thinking or give me new pieces in line, more pieces to fit into my puzzle of how I feel about this. Right. But my thought on baneful magic is I don't want to practice what I deem baneful magic personally, but also what is deemed baneful magic. Is it only hexes and curses? Do binding spells count as baneful magic? Do
love
spells, prosperity spells, return to sender spells, mirror spells, wards on your home to repel other magical people? Where does the line exist for what is baneful and what is not baneful? Okay, right? So that is a thought process that goes into my line of where does baneful magic fall in magical ethics? Is it unethical, i.e., right? That's the question. Is it unethical to practice baneful magic? And I know we have two different feelings here. And I think that's totally good for the conversation. But I've just come to a place where I don't believe the universe would allow something to be carried out that, like you said, maybe not deserved or should not be. I think the universe ultimately could prevent energetic things from happening that the universe says, no ho. Okay. So if Mary Jane wants to practice baneful magic, really that just tells me about Mary Jane, not necessarily that they're a bad person. Again, like I have friends that practice baneful magic. I would not do that because I don't want my energy negatively affecting the energetic field at all, for one. But also, I don't want my energy wrapped up in trying to harm another because I believe that harm, I'm not talking like any specific creed, but I do have the ideal that if I am sending that out there, in the ripple of me sending it out, it will hit a wall and ripple back to me eventually. So whatever ill will I choose to actively put out into the world, I believe is going to eventually ripple back to me. And from a standpoint of avoiding that, I would never practice baneful magic. Is that in and of itself unethical? I think some people would say it's unethical that you wouldn't do it just so that you don't have bad things happen to you. I truly believe people would think that just from the same standpoint of, some people like that are pagan say, well, you have to have religion to tell you to be a good person. That means you're not a good person, right? So would some people say that my fear of a repercussion is in not doing something, even though my repercussion is just I don't want to taint myself, right? I don't want to taint my own energy and I don't want to harm myself in the future by putting harm out there. But some people might see that as unethical from the standpoint of I'm only doing it out of a lack of wanting it to come back at me. I don't know if that's ethical or not. I truly don't. I don't think it's unethical. The reason why I would not practice baneful magic, I understand most people think that baneful magic is unethical. I am having a hard time personally saying, I don't think that you should be able to do that at all, because we are all part of this big energetic field, and you're going to manipulate things the way you're going to. You know what I mean? But then on the counter of that, let's take magic out of it. I would say a person shouldn't gaslight another person, which is the same thing, right? So, I mean, I don't think somebody should gaslight somebody else. I don't think somebody should practice baneful magic. Am I going to say you should be locked up in magical prison, or, you know, be in the bad person book for doing these? Fuck, maybe actually, because again, that's the whole point of this conversation, is to delve further, right? Because even though I don't want to tell anybody not to practice baneful magic, I just think it's damaging. If nothing else, it's damaging your own energetic field. I'm not sure. I don't know. What do you think? Is baneful magic unethical? What are your thoughts on baneful magic?
My thoughts are a little different. And while you were talking, I was sitting here thinking my own thoughts as well. That's why I was so quiet. So I think it is unethical. And I know what people are going to come at me when I say this, okay? So just hang in there while I finish, okay? I think it is unethical to hex someone who is undeserving. And then you say that and you go, well, what makes it deserving? Well, if someone's a serial killer, if someone's a child molester, if someone's a murderer, I don't think that there are if the problem is people want to hex and curse so quickly. Oh, this person pissed me off. Fuck you. I'm putting you in a shower jar. That is unethical, in my opinion. Oh, you disagree with what I have to say? I'm putting you in a shower jar. That is unethical, in my opinion. Oh, you pissed me off. You talk shit on me. That's petty and that's unethical. You know what I'm saying? But I can't say I think it is unethical for a victim to hex their abuser. But I'm also a big fan of vigilante. So I don't know if that falls like in hand in hand. If someone, you know, but then that calls into question, well, who is to say who is deserving and who is not? But I truly believe if you killed someone on purpose, if you are a molester, if you are a rapist, you absolutely are deserving of baneful magic. And I think people get pissy about that. And they're like, well, again, who are you to say that? But if I wanted that mentality, I'd be a Christian. Like, why does this person deserve to go to heaven? Well, it's not your choice. You know what I mean? So I think hexing willy-nilly, like, this person pissed me off on the internet. I don't like this person. Blah, blah, blah. People are just so quick to hex when someone pisses them off, and that's a problem. That is a problem.
So would you say that you think, because this is what I'm hearing, and I don't know if I'm right.
Yeah, no, please, because I'm having trouble.
Would you say that you think that when you are doing it irresponsibly, without forethought and afterthought, and actually taking the time to put yourself into a clear space to practice this magic, if you're not doing that, it's unethical? But otherwise, if you're kind of being responsible with it,
I think so. I think so.
That and I would agree with that. I do.
That being said, I personally do not practice baneful magic. It's not something that I dabble in or practice. You know, it's really not. I don't like the feel of the energy. I don't want to be around that energy. I don't want to release that energy, like you said. But I also don't want to say I think all hexing and cursing is unethical, because I think a majority of it, unfortunately, is. And I say unfortunately because I think people do it irresponsibly. I think people think, oh, fuck this person, I'm going to do this or whatever. When it's something that could be fixed by simply talking to a person. And that comes into hexing, cursing. That should be the last option. And not just hexing and cursing, but baneful magic, which also includes bindings and something else that's like a binding. Cord cutting. You know what I mean? That can
Mhm.
fall into the same category as, you know.
Well, and that is actually where I was going to go next is, okay, so outside of baneful magic, because I don't necessarily consider cord cutting or, the spells where you are sending someone away
Removing.
or
Okay, maybe I
releasing,
shouldn't
removing.
say cord cutting, but more the binding, because you are binding someone's either their will or their energy or their ability to do something. So to me, that is baneful. You know?
No, I agree with the binding. It does fall into the category of baneful. But then I was going to ask, do you think that like removal spells or sending away spells or cord cutting spells do you think that is baneful magic? Like personally, I will just go ahead and say I don't think it's baneful.
I don't think so either.
A lot of it comes from protecting oneself. A lot of it comes from retribution or anger or whatever. And that's okay because
again, you have to practice responsibly.
Right. Because like again, with like baneful magic is the way one practices, just like the way one presents themselves to the world in every other way, really can just tell the rest of us what we want or need to know in a situation or about a person. And again, that doesn't mean I'm judging somebody that does baneful magic. What I mean is our own biases, like we started off, we're going to have different ethics. We're going to have different ethics for different reasons because we have different morals per se in some areas because we're not the same person. We have different backgrounds. And it goes for everybody in the world. And in addition to that, we have our own biases that we come to something with, right? So I'm not going to judge somebody for doing baneful magic, but because I do have my own biases, that is going to tell me things about that person. And that is all I mean. So please don't be offended. If you're listening and you're like, God damn, Amber, you're just going to quietly judge. No, it's people's actions. Let me know about those people, period, point blank. Those words at face value is exactly what I mean when I say that. And I just want that on the table for the conversation, like the whole of this conversation, because that is what I mean when I say like ethical or unethical. I'm not sure where I fall on certain things, but all of those actions are going to show me about a person. Cord cuttings, like I think that with cord cuttings and removal spells and sending away spells, a lot of people are way too quick to do it. So I think it's unethical only in situations where you are performing that for some other people, when it's not a you thing. And I don't mean like when you're being paid to do that. I mean, I don't like for a hypothetical.
If your friend is in a relationship with someone that you don't find appropriate or that you don't like them, so you're going to do a cord cutting, I see what you mean.
Yeah, like I without their knowledge, like if they come to you and say, hey, can you do this? That's different. But when you're like, oh, he's not good for her.
Right.
I'm going to take care of this. That is unethical.
I guess ultimately, I think it is unethical to do anything against another person's will or to take away their free will. Again, I want to make sure that, victims hexing their abusers aside. You know what I mean? There are a time and place. There are situations where I am not. I'm sure you're not as well. I mean, I don't want to speak for you. I am not referencing those type of situations.
Well, and see, I am not for retribution. So to me, that falls under the same guys. Like it really does. Like,
no, I'm only smiling because we've had this conversation so many times.
Yeah.
I love retribution.
I have gotten to a point where, like I would much, I am for other forms and that's,
oh my God,
that's okay.
I'm just over here like, oh my God, is it? I'm not from Texas, so it's not a Texas thing.
Yeah, I am from Texas, but I'm still against it.
But you get what I'm saying. Is it a Midwestern thing? Put him in the chair.
I don't know. I think a lot of it has to do with like, life experience and like what you've experienced, what I've experienced. Like, I don't know. I don't even know when it happened, but because I used to be like, I get the death penalty, I do. But then there's this fucking movie, The Life of David Gale. I think David Gale, The Death of David Gale, something David Gale. His last name's Gale, and it's a movie about a reporter who is against the death penalty, and somebody else that he works with, is friends with, whatever, their colleagues. I'm not sure. It's been a really long time since I've seen this movie, but she is also against the death penalty. She finds out that she's dying from cancer or some such thing.
Mm-hmm.
So they put together this horribly elaborate suicide that looks like a murder, like a torture murder, right? He and she had sex before she died. She put her underwear back on, so now it could be
like
perceived.
rape.
Yeah, it could be perceived as rape. Puts a bag over her head, and swallows the key for the handcuffs that she handcuffs herself with. And this is how she goes. He is helping her, but they're also videotaping this whole thing while she's talking about the fact that this is her choice. She doesn't want to die the way that she's going to die of cancer. And so like she wants her life to mean something. And so she's against the death penalty. And basically like they set it up to look like he murdered her. And then the videotape was sent to somebody else and he went to prison and he was sentenced to the death penalty. And I'm pretty sure he was put to death. And then the videotape was released.
Well, that's that's his dumbass fault, though. Like, I don't mean to be rude.
No, that was the whole point.
But he
because it's so easy to arrest an innocent man. It's so easy to put an innocent person. He went out of his way to have what's the evidence that usually shouldn't be allowed in trial, but we convict people on it all the time? Circumstantial. Everything that he was convicted on was circumstantial evidence. He told the truth about every single thing, and they were like, you're lying. They couldn't prove he was lying, but they got him found guilty in a court of law because it looked like, it looked like it, but that doesn't mean it was. And that happens in our country all the time where people look guilty because of circumstantial evidence. They have no way to prove they're innocent. They get convicted in a court of law and they serve, like, now that we have DNA evidence, so many people are being released on rape charges.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Don't cancel this video. Being released on rape charges, and they lost their entire fucking lives. Their children are adults now. They missed everything. And I am one of those people who I don't think innocent people should be in prison, and I don't think our prison system reforms anybody, and our prison system never should have been made privatized. And I know this isn't about prison, but we did bring up like the death penalty, and that's where I went off. So I apologize. But from the standpoint of punishment and retribution, I just truly, unless and even if you do know, when is somebody beyond retribution? Or I'm sorry, not retribution. When is somebody beyond salvation? When is somebody beyond?
When they're child molesters or rapists. I do not, I cannot, and that's part of why I left the church. Really, truly. Because I remember asking, so the man who raped me as a child, raped, whatever, can go to heaven because he can ask for forgiveness. He's allowed his salvation.
I don't believe, just because the book says that, because there is no way that my cousin is getting into heaven. I don't care who he lies to, that he didn't do all the shit he did. There's no way that piece of absolute fucking shit could say any amount of words after what he did to me, after what he did to his son, after what he did to a lot of other people. There's no way that you could say some fucking words and magically get through those pearly gates. I don't give a fuck what the Bible says. There is no goddamn way that even the retributive fucking Hebrew God would allow that. I don't believe that for a second. I know that's what they told you. And that's what they tell people to convert them. I just cannot believe that for a motherfucking second. I cannot. I literally just can't. I cannot believe it.
I cannot believe that everyone is redeemable, or I do not believe that everyone.
And technically, I did not say everyone was redeemable. I did say at what point do you not, you're no longer eligible for salvation.
Mhm.
Harming a child is where I think you are no longer eligible.
Well, and you could even go so far as to, again, I think it depends on your morals and your ethics.
Mhm.
And for me, harming a child, harming a person who cannot defend themselves in any way, whether it be sexually or physically, for example, a handicapped person, torturing an animal. You know, these are unforgivable. And I don't care if you're doing this shit because your religion says that you can. And I just want to say that. I don't give a fuck if your religion says that's okay to do, or we should do that. Nah, fuck that. Like, I do not find people that, and some people are gonna hate me for that, I guess, but I cannot. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't think it's unethical, you know, to.
And that's fine. I'm just saying, like,
Mhm.
technically, when I say, like,
Mhm.
you know, of the baneful magic that I
Mhm.
do think is unethical, like when you're practicing in a certain way, like,
Mhm.
I do think it's unethical no matter who your target is. No matter
Well, and
the
that's
person,
a really
because-
it's an interesting topic of conversation
'cause
because
you
there
talk
are
about
lots of people
harming a person,
right.
but if your baneful magic is for them to be harmed, now you're a bad person, right?
No, I don't
No?
think so. I think that if
But
someone
you're harming a person.
if
You are no
someone-
longer redeemable.
if someone abused you and you want magically to hex or curse that person, I think that's your right. I don't think that puts you in the same category as your abuser.
But if you're harming a person,
Who-
you just
Who knows
I'm
how it's
asking
gonna
you.
who knows
Well,
how
but
it's
what-
gonna manifest.
But that's what I'm asking, because you just said that you're irredeemable as a person when you harm another person
who is
So-
vulnerable. If you harm a child, if you harm an animal, like horribly, if you harm another person who is weak, I don't think abusers are vulnerable.
I think abusers are the weakest people out there. That's
Oh,
why they're
I do
abusers.
think they're weak, yes, but I don't think they're vulnerable. And I think you harm you rape a witch. I mean, fuck, you get what's coming for you.
I mean, hey, I am all for that African protection thing, the little slip up there and it's got the spikies. Like, so
But-
like,
but
I'm not
I
saying
feel
I'm
like-
a proponent for these things. What I am saying, though, I do
just-
believe in redemption, except if you are a repeat child predator. If
I
you're a
think it
repeat
can
child
be-
predator, I do not think you're
Mhm.
redeemable. And even if you are, you know what? Let's save the air, let's save the water, let's save the food, and not feed you anymore.
I think it can
I'm
be.
just saying.
I think it can be, and I'm so glad we're doing this episode because this is such a
Yeah,
great.
it's a good conversation.
I think it can be in a way damaging. To, and I don't think it was. I don't think what I
can't
said was
stop
intentional.
eating.
I know I want another one so bad. I'm trying to wait till we're done.
Okay.
That's
That's why I'm just waiting to say you start talking and then another cupcake.
But I don't want a victim to hear, well, if you he hurt a person, you know, you're hurting a person now. Are you as bad as that person? Because I don't think that was the intention with that. But I can see how somebody would think that it came out that way. So I want to be clear, like, no.
Well,
You
and
know-
here's my thing is, if you look into the history of a lot of people that are child predators, you will find they were a child victim themselves.
Mhm.
So that is retribution. It was done to me, so I'm going to do it to someone else, right? So it's just like continuing a cycle. So I'm not saying to a victim, like, you're a bad person if you do baneful magic. But what I am saying is, for a victim to turn around and do something else, I mean, we say it's not okay for this person, but it is okay for this person. That person was a victim, you know, before they became a predator. And I'm not comparing victims to predators. Please do not misunderstand. What I'm saying is, in this conversation, a lot of the people that we're saying are irredeemable were themselves victims before they became predators. And I'm not saying that's
And-
okay. I'm saying it is a pattern, and that is all I'm saying.
No, it
I'm
is
not
a
saying it's
pattern.
okay.
No, it's
I'm not
totally a
saying it's
pattern.
okay.
They didn't get out. They didn't break the generational curse. They had those opportunities.
But did they? They were a victim themselves. And you're talking about victims getting retribution. They are a victim who is, yes, they are turning around and punishing somebody else. I'm not defending it. I'm not defending it. Like, if that's what it said, like, I'm not defending it. What I'm saying is the person who is the predator so often was a victim in the first place. And most of the time we say, doesn't matter. But in the conversation, we're also saying like a victim can turn around and get retribution and not be on the same level as their abuser who was a victim in the first place. And that's just, it's just a thought process, guys.
I personally do not think a hex is as bad as physically raping someone.
Well,
I don't put those in the same categories at all.
I don't, well, so when I'm thinking about like, I'm not thinking about like, oh, the milk in their house is going to go sour.
Mm-hmm.
It's like most people, when they're trying to get retribution against someone that harmed them, are trying to harm that person, like physically. They want a demon or the devil or, you know, some bad entity to physically harm this person. Like that is what I see most of the time when people talk about hexing and cursing. So that is the standpoint I'm coming from. Not like, I'm not coming from like, oh, you did me wrong and I don't want your plants to grow. And if that's the case, well, I mean, I am not like, that is not the level of hexing I'm thinking about. I don't think of that as baneful magic. That is an annoyance, you know? And so I guess that is part of the conversation too. Like, there are different levels of baneful magic, I guess.
Right. There's little annoyances, like you said.
Yeah, because to me, the annoyances, that's all they are. They're annoyances. They're not unethical. That's you're being petty, you know, and that's not what I'm referring to at all when I'm talking about this. Like in the line that we've just been talking specifically just now, I specifically was talking from a vein of trying to harm another magically, like with magic, because practitioners of baneful magic absolutely believe that they have the power to physically harm another, you know, and that is the thread that I was speaking in, and only that thread. Like, and again, I don't think it's okay. Like, again, this is just a conversation and a thought process. I'm not saying I think that's okay at all. I'm just, you know, just keeping that conversation going, like from that, because a lot of people probably are asking some of the same questions. You know what I mean?
I just don't have any sympathy. And I just don't think, again, I think this is where the goddess or the universe comes in. And I think it really just depends on the universe and how, I guess, how they're going to do it. Because,
well, and I mean, that's for me, like, that's what I would leave it up to, period. But, you know, it's the action of practicing the craft means that you're making an active, you're actively putting your energy into it one way or the other.
I think it's a way a lot of people take their power back. I think it's, yeah, that's what I think.
Well, and that goes hand in hand with the meme of two boys grew up with an alcoholic father. One grew up to be an abusive alcoholic. The other didn't. They both said, I watched my father. So it's just the person. And again, that goes back to the very beginning where I said, it just shows you about the person. You know what I mean? More than anything. It's not for me so much to judge whether they're ethical or unethical, in my opinion. Like, and this is me, because to me, it is just the person showing what, you know, what they are as a person versus me judging you're unethical or you're ethical. I think that was a perfect place to go with that. So what about prosperity magic? Some people think it's unethical.
I am very conflicted on prosperity magic because my mentor had mentioned it to me previously. years ago we were talking about it. You think a spell, I think we're actually referencing like the Wiccan Reed and how I won't get into that, but how it's damn near impossible to harm none.
Mm-hmm.
It's damn near impossible to harm none when it comes to casting. For example, prosperity spells. I'm going to do a spell that I get this job and you get this job. But the person who really needed that job, who was a single mother with 5 kids, husband just died, they didn't get the job. So while it seems like a spell where you're harming none, you really are.
Yeah.
You know,
somebody's being negatively affected.
right. So is that ethical or not? Is prosperity magic ethical? Because in one way or another person, whether it's for a job interview or to get a promotion, you're kind of taking that away from another person so that you can get it. So do you consider that ethical? I don't necessarily. I feel like if we really wanted to, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go, please.
But with prosperity, we mentioned prosperity, baneful magic aside, just regular magic. At the prosperity magic, baneful, with the hexes and curses shit aside, okay? Any form of magic, I think, could be seen as unethical in the sense that we're using our energy we're manipulating energy, not just using our own energy to help my plant grow. Was that ethical? Is magic in itself ethical? Prosperity, like we just discussed, love spells certainly ethical.
So I want to continue the conversation, but yes, actually, through a lot of my research that I've been doing lately and reading that I've been doing lately, I have come to the conclusion that I'm not sure how I feel about practicing witchcraft anymore. Not that I'm against practicing witchcraft, but you just said it a moment ago. Is any magic ethical? Because you're exerting your will over the natural world and making changes in the energetic field for your own benefit 99.999% of the time. Because even when you're doing spells for other people, most of the time they're paying you for it. And I'm no longer sure. I'm not against witchcraft, but magic is not necessarily as ambivalent in the energetic field as I used to think. And is that ethical or unethical? I don't know. But it's interesting that you brought that up because it's a question I've been toying with. Because love spells are unethical. Love spells are unethical, guys. The only love spell let me rephrase. The only love spell that I think is ethical versus unethical, because I'm speaking about what I think, is if you are in a relationship and you just want to strengthen your relationship. And I'm biased because that is the only love spell I've ever done or written. It was one where it was to strengthen my relationship with my husband.
I don't know. I feel like that depends because if you're doing it without the other person knowing.
Well,
you know what I mean?
It's a joint spell.
Okay, if it's a joint, I think love spells that are joint spells in general are okay.
Yeah,
right?
that would
as
be
long
a
as
good,
they
better way to put
motherfucking
it.
know
Yeah.
about it. Yes.
Right. Yeah.
But if it's, I am so scared I'm on the verge of a divorce. Please help me save my relationship.
Then that's unethical. Right. Yeah. And that is why I said just to strengthen, because that would be completely fixing, right?
Right,
Like
right.
we have problems, we haven't dealt with them, and now I think we're on the verge of divorce. And when I say strengthening, it's really just working together to have that stronger bond. And that is what I meant by that's the only kind I feel is ethical. And I like the way you put it much better than the way I put it. And to backtrack just a little bit, because, I went into my little response to what you said about that, because it is something that I have been completely just trying to figure out how I feel about it. But prosperity magic, I don't think it's necessarily unethical. Yes, from the Wiccan Reed standpoint, it's pretty much impossible to harm none with prosperity.
Well, it's pretty much impossible to. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I only brought that up because You know, when I was talking with Copper, my mentor, about it, she's like, yeah, no, that's an impossible thing when you practice magic. But if harm none, do what you will. If you are practicing magic, someone is always going to get the butt end of that, like with the prosperity and the love spell. And it is what it is.
Yeah, so I don't think that prosperity spells are unethical inherently. I think that if performed incorrectly, they could wind up in a loved one dying and you getting an inheritance. So they're definitely something that you got to be super responsible with. But honestly, even though you could get a job and somebody else could not get that job, that could happen for any number of other reasons as well, right? The interviewer can have their own personal bias, and that one's a single mom. You're not a single mom. Well, I think you're going to show up more. I'm not going to say that out loud because it's illegal, but I'm going to hire you instead of her.
Right.
And she still doesn't
magically
get the job.
Influencing it. You still magically
right.
it,
But
as
what
opposed to it naturally.
Right. But what I mean is I just don't see it as unethical because of the fact that it could happen with or without your influence. You know what I mean? And I do believe that, like, again, like you could say that no prosperity magic is ethical, like, you know, but even like if you said no love magic is ethical, we just discussed there is that, you know, there is the space where there are ethical love spells. There's the space where there are unethical prosperity spells. But in general, I don't see prosperity spells as unethical, even if I, in my own personal headspace, am trying to figure out where I fall on putting your energy into affecting the, like, because here's the thing. Okay. Let's touch back to where you were like, is any magic ethical? And I was like, oh, that's crazy that you said that because I've been wondering. There's shit, I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. I think, okay, now I know where I was going. But I think that if you are using your magical influence or you are using witchcraft in a way that is intended, although the road to hell is paved with good intentions, so we'll come back to that statement. If you're practicing magic in a way that is intended simply to fix the fucking mess that exists in this world, then that would not be an unethical manner of affecting your energy into the energetic fields that we all exist upon.
But people are going to be affected. People will be affected by that, whether it affects them negatively or not.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. You would affect them beneficially, and that's the only. But most of the time, when we do magic, it's only to benefit ourselves, and that is how it's damaging to the Akashic record and to the whole energetic field that we exist in and all draw energy from and give energy to and exist as a part of, right? So if you think about it like a wading pool, right? The more people are bouncing around, the more this kid over here is getting splashed or dunked under the water when they're not as good on the water as these kids over here, right? So like when everybody is getting into the energy field and they're like, oh, I want this and I want this and I need this and I want this and I need this and I need this. And then you got people over here that are trying to exist, but they keep getting dunked under by all the waves that are coming their way, right?
I think that comes with practicing responsibly. And I know you and I have had a conversation as well. You don't need a spell for everything. I rarely cast spells. Simply because when it comes with knowledge and experience, you don't have to cast a fucking spell for everything. You know, you really don't. And there's a bunch of newer witches, and just, I guess, not even just newer witches, but some witches that think you do. You do not have to. Like, I'm a practicing witch, and I rarely cast spells much anymore. And a lot of the ones that I do are upping my protections for my family and myself, and things like that. But I simply, the more I practice and the more I study, and I simply no longer feel the need to continue to cast prosperity spells or to cast. I mean, I don't get it anymore.
I've never been one to like cast a lot. Like I work directly with a lot of like spirit, you know, I work directly with my ancestors. I work directly with higher self. I work directly with some other entities. And it's not that I'm saying people who practice witchcraft are bad. Like, obviously, I am a witch. Like,
right. No, I practice witchcraft. I just don't cast all the time.
Right.
You know?
And so, like, when I say that, like, is practicing, like, it's just this thing where once people could manipulate the energy and they could figure out how they can manipulate the energy and they started manipulating the energy, like, they aren't doing it with anything in mind but their own end. And even that, most of the time, comes out afoul because of diving in too quickly or not, whatever, right? But from the standpoint that I believe in reincarnation, I very much care about what's going on here. You know what I mean? And I care about what's going on in the fourth dimension and the fifth dimension. And I care about what's going on in the first and the second, because at some point I'm gonna be back in all these places, right? And so I very much care about how these are affected by what people are doing. And at the same time, I do not feel in any way that I can tell anybody what they should do or not, which is, you know, touching back at the beginning of the episode on, you know, do I even feel like I can say this is ethical or unethical? You know, because my own feelings are my own feelings on a lot of things. And so even if I ever come to the conclusion that you cannot practice magic completely ethically or completely beneficially, I will never tell anybody else that they shouldn't, because I think that right there is wrong. Like, that's unethical of me to put my own views and my own thoughts on other people, even if it's based on things I've learned. You know what I mean? Like, I think that would be unethical of me to say. Now, if somebody comes upon the information on their own and they make their own decision, well, wonderful. You know, it's fine. I don't care. I don't mean I don't care in a bad way. I mean, like, that's wonderful, but that is everybody's individual decision to make. And so I think practicing magic irresponsibly in and of itself is unethical. I think that's what I'm coming to.
Well, and I think that's honestly a good way to like draw I just say this because we're coming up on an hour.
Gotcha.
But I agree. I think that's a good way to end this. Is like, practicing irresponsibly or uneducated is unethical. So it's just, it is what it is.
Yeah, because like, and again, these are our thoughts. If you have stuck along this whole time, you've heard us go back and forth and figure out where we stand on certain things that maybe we didn't
come to agreements on certain things. She has her belief, I have my belief. Yeah, but we didn't argue.
Right. No, we just stand up. We just wanted to understand where each other was coming from. And we hope you go to your magical community and hopefully can have as wonderful of a conversation with just understanding and questioning, and not questioning because you're wrong, questioning so that we can understand.
Yes.
Because that's what it's all about.
Exactly.
All right. Well, super huge 200th episode thank you to Victoria,
Melissa,
Death by DVD,
and Pam.
We appreciate y'all supporting us on patreon.com/Witches Talking Tarot. And if you would love to support us over the course of our next 200 episodes, that's where you can do so. And you can start for as little as $6 a month. That's not even a fucking cup of coffee.
You can also find us on Threads, Instagram, and Facebook at Witches Talking Tarot.
And you can find us on the X. I will never stop doing that. At Classiest Witches, because we are the classiest witches, you know.
Thanks for sitting with us for a spell.
Bye. That was so much fun.
That was a really good episode.
Happy 200! Oh my god, we got them all! Fuck yeah! Because that's how we roll. We're Witches Talking Tarot.
I'm Amber. And we're Witches Talking Tarot.
We are the weirdos in this story.
Like a song, like a Santa snubble. Flip the switch and let the cauldron bubble. Sam.
Wow.